we have our next speaker, Arsalan Ahmed. It's great to see you speaking here at React India. I hope your talk goes very well. All the best for your talk.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Fazil. Hello, good afternoon. I hope you are doing good. Arsalan, lead experience engineer, full stack JavaScript here at Publicis Pune. So today we'll explore how to build React components that are not only functional but also readable, maintainable, and scalable. Now, as developers, we have a range of CSS approaches from style components, Tailwind CSS, etc. But we'll dive into some of the most effective methods that I've used. The end goal of this talk is to create a very simple, flexible component API, just like those found in libraries like Chakra UI and Next UI. Now, if you look at, for example, Next UI, these buttons, they look stunning, right? So, sorry, I'll start the timer. So if you look at the Next UI button, right, they look stunning. They have various color schemes and they have various variants. So if you look at the code, it's lean, clean, where you have the color scheme prop, where you can pass primary, secondary, success. Similarly, for the variants, you have the variant props. So you have the color scheme and the variant, solid, faded, bordered, etc. So we want to build something like this. Similarly, if you check Chakra UI, it has this utility props like BG, like size, and this is kind of a utility props, but like Tailwind, but for props. And all these values like green.500, blue.500, all these values, they come from our theme. So this is kind of a design system. So we'll aspire to build something like this. Cool. So before I dive into our first approach, let's look what the agenda is today. So we'll check vanilla CSS and class names. Then we'll take a look at style components and CSS in JS. Then we'll take a look at style system and how it can help us developing design systems. Then we'll look at CSS and class variance authority. Then we'll take a look at Tailwind CSS. And finally, Panda CSS, which is a very powerful built-in time CSS in JS solution. At each step, we'll discuss the pros and cons of each method, with the ultimate goal of creating scalable, maintainable components that evolve naturally as your app grows. Now, I have a lot of demos, a lot of code, but you don't need to know everything, or just follow me and you'll get to know the pros and cons of each approach. Now, before diving again, some of the best practices that I aspire to follow while building components: centralized theme. Always start with a centralized theme. No need of writing hex values here and there in all your CSS file. Then create utility classes or utility components, atomic components. For example, if you want to center content at various places in your application, rather than using display flex, align item center, or justify content center, just create a dot center class and use it everywhere, right? Then atomic components. We'll take a glimpse at atomic components, but you can read about it more. And then finally making scalable systems. We'll take a look at it. Our goal is to create a system that's scalable, maintainable in the long run, and we'll see how to keep the code lean, clean, and easy to read. So first approach is CSS variables and class names. So first, let's look at our demo. So I have the same button component with all the color schemes: primary, secondary, success, warning, error. Similarly, I have all the variants like solid, ghost, outline, etc., flat, etc. Now, if you were to build this with CSS, how would you do this? Let's check how I did it. So first, we have the page.tsx where using the button. It has a similar Next UI like API where you can pass in the color scheme prop and the variants, and it's all type safe, right? All type safe. So you have the variant and the color scheme. Then in the index.css, I have all the colors, primary colors, secondary colors. Everything in my theme is here in the index.css. So my system is theme driven. Finally, we have the button.css. Simple button.css where you have the base button classes, align center, removing the borders, etc. Then we have all the variants with the color scheme. So this is a solid variant and primary. So if the variant is solid and the color scheme is primary, apply these styles. And all these colors, they come from our theme. So it's theme driven, it's centralized. Similarly, I have the bordered variant with all its color schemes, so on and so forth. Makes sense? And I'm using CSS nesting. So the code is very readable. You can browse through the code from top to bottom. Everything is right in its place, right? Finally, in the button.tsx file, I first have my types, type for the color scheme, type for the variant. Then I'm using class names, which is a simple JavaScript library, a function that will attach classes. So if the color scheme is primary, if the color scheme prop is primary, and if the variant is solid, it will attach this class, solid primary. And where is this class? Solid primary. So you see how the code is flowing and where are the values coming from? Okay, so it's background color. Where are these values coming from? They're coming from the theme. So this is kind of a system, right? Then similarly, you have all the values for bordered variant, so on and so forth. So basically, we are checking the props, we are checking the condition, and we are attaching the relevant classes. Plain, simple, no magic, straightforward. And given the fact that this is verbose, but it's more readable. So there is always this trade-off between verbosity and readability. I have a concise version here, right? But you have to do some mental gymnastics, right, to understand this. So I'll keep it like this only. Cool. And we have this button, and we have this clean API, like button variant solid, color scheme primary, button variant bordered, color scheme second, so on and so forth. And it's all type safe. Cool. So what are some of the pros and cons of this approach? So pros, it's familiar CSS. No, you don't need to learn anything new. And cons, I believe, as your app grows, your code might get harder to read, especially with all the verbosity. Depends, right? Especially in complex cases like accordion or tab, there are better options like class variance authority, which will check it. But let's move on to our next approach, which is style components. Again, you don't need to understand everything, but just take a look at the flow, right? So again, first, let me open the project. Awesome. Cool. So here is our demo, style components, same button, all the color schemes, different variants. So what's different with style components? Let's see. First, I have my theme as it is. Index.css, I have all my theme values in index.css. Then in the page.tsx, I'm using the button. It has the same component API. We have variants, we have color schemes. Make sense? Now let's look at our button component. First, I have all the types, all type safe. Then in style components, given the fact that this is CSS, but in JavaScript, CSS in JS, I have all my styles scoped to the button component. So I don't have any separate CSS file. I have all my styles in the button component in the same file. The code reads from top to bottom. Very clean, very neat. So I have all the base styles. Then I have these dynamic properties. So given the fact that this is CSS, but in JS, again, I can have all these dynamic properties. So if you want to add height, width, margin, padding to anything, right, rather than creating a separate class, or rather than composing a new component, rather than creating a new component, I can just do margin equals 2. That's it. Very convenient, very simple. So this is the power of CSS in JS. We can have these dynamic properties. And look at my variant and color scheme code. You saw the CSS example. It was kind of verbose, but neat and clean. But here, given the fact that we are using JavaScript, we can use all these switch cases, all these ternaries, everything. So our code is more concise. Yeah, you can read it. It's very concise and maintainable. In just 122 lines of code, we created everything for the button, right? Every color scheme, every variant as it is. And the code flows from top to bottom. Make sense? Simple. We have all the dynamic properties. We have all the variants with color schemes. And we are dynamically getting these variants from our color scheme. So we are using CSS variables. Make sense? Cool. Now, given the fact that this is dynamic, can I create a flex component with all its values? Like, and just like Chakra UI, where I can pass direction top as column, and it's all type safe. Make sense? Cool. So in the flex component, I first create my types, direction, gap, align, whatever property I want. Then I have all the dynamic properties, simple JavaScript plain functions. Make sense? Now you see in the flex, I center content a lot in my projects. So rather than using align center, justify center everywhere where I want to center content, can I not create a center component directly from the flex component? So now I'm composing components. I'm creating new components from other atomic components. So basically we are composing new components. Here I have the align center, justify center, and rather than using this flex align center, justify center, I can directly use the center component, and we can remove this. Clean, simple, right? Our app works as it is. Now, then in the center, in the flex, you see I have this margin, padding, height, width, but the flex component should only be concerned with the flex policy, single responsibility principle. So what I'll do, I'll just comment this out. I'll comment this out, and I'll create a container component called as box, very similar to Chakra UI. So first, it has all its props, background color, it takes margin, margin top, etc. And with this CSS in JS, I can just add these functions, and it will take the properties. Then I can compose one component from the other component. So in the flex component, what I'll do, I'll first extend my types, very important. That's it. So I created a box component, a base container layout, taking all the margin, background, color properties. I extended the flex with it. Now what I can do, if I want some background, I can do Azure, for example, and I have this Azure background. So this center component takes this background prop. The center component is made up of flex component. and the flex component in turn extending the box component. So see how the prop is flowing from center to flex to box. This is how you compose components, and this is the power of CSS in JS. So, like, what are some of the pros and cons of this approach? You see, dynamic styling. You have the dynamic styling. You can pass H margin, very convenient. Then you have intuitive syntax similar to SCSS. CSS in JS, you can use SCSS syntax also, right? Co-located styles scope to your component. But there are some of the cons, like runtime generation might impact performance in larger applications. If you're building a no-code, low-code tool, or if you're building a CMS with a drag and drop, might impact. And some CSS heavy developers may face a learning curve because this is CSS but in JS. Now, how can we improve this functionality later? So let's take a look at style systems. So first, let me open the project. Again, you don't need to understand everything. Just flow with me. So this is something I built way back in 2021 during the pandemic, a Chakra UI clone where everything is laid down in atomic design fashion. And you have this button. This button it can be full width. You can add multiple colors, gray, orange, teal. Everything flows from the theme, right? You can change the size of the button, right? And it has multiple variants like outline, solid, loading can be 2, false, etc. So let's start with style components. First, let's check what is style systems. First, I have my colors. All my colors are in the colors.tsx file. Basic. I have my theme. All my colors are in the colors.tsx file. Gray, red, all the variants here. Then I have all my spacing theme tokens, XSS, XS, SM, MD. Colors, spacing. Similarly, I have font sizes, fonts, etc. I'm bringing this all together in the theme object. Simple. I have my theme and I'm bringing this all together in the theme object. Plain, simple JavaScript. I have this breakpoints. We'll see the breakpoint magic later. Then what I do, I take this theme and I pass it to the theme provider, which comes from style components. Fine. I have a theme. I pass the theme directly. Simple. Now let's take a look at box component. Here is where style system, it shines. Now in the previous example, we created all the props ourselves, like height, padding, all the functions ourselves. So style system, it gives something called as utility functions like space, layout, typography, color, along with their type definitions, space, props, layout, props, etc. So first I create my type. Then in the box, in the style component definition of the box, I just pass this space, layout, typography. What this will do is when I pass space, it will give me all the margin related props like margin, margin bottom, margin left, margin right? For the layout, it will give me all the height and width related props like height, width, everything type safe. For the typography, it will give me all the font size props. So I can just pass 12 pixels. No need to create a new class, no need to create anything new, right? For color, it has given me BG and color, and this BG is all type safe. Red 500. All these values, they come from our theme. How cool is this? How simple is this? This is what we call as a design system, where everything is type safe, everything flows from a theme, all the props are taken by your components, like very similar to Chakra UI. And I can give red 500. Similarly, style system, they provide something called as a system function, where you can create your own utility functions, right? Your own custom props. So for this width property, I don't want to write width, like I'll just do W. So I created a shorthand for the width. Similarly, for the height, I created a shorthand. Similarly, for the max width, max height, so on and so forth. Then take a look at this margin start. I created this margin start shorthand for margin inline start property, which is in CSS. So let me first margin start, everything type safe. And all these values, MD, SM, XS, they come from our theme. Now, how will style system know to pick this LG from our spacing? I have mentioned the scale here. That's how cool it is. Then you can also target multiple properties. So this border and radius, I'm targeting multiple properties, border top right radius, border bottom right radius, so on and so forth. Now let's take a look at our button component. Okay. So let's take a look at our button component. Our button component has the same lean, clean API where we have color scheme, variant, color scheme teal, variant solid, color scheme teal, variant outline, so on and so forth. So style system gives this variant function where the prop name is variant, makes sense, and it will take all these values, link, outline, solid, ghost, etc. So it's all type safe, right? So I can come and simple. Similarly, I have the variant for sizes, right? And it will take all these values. Everything is type safe, LG, MD, SM. Now the breakpoints I mentioned, right? So for one of the buttons where you want to show that button for MD size on a medium screen, but LG size on a large screen, what you will do? You will create some media queries, you will create some class, or you will extend this button. What we can do with style system is simple. You can come up here for MD, all type safe. I'll do MD. For LG, I'll do LG. That's it. How super convenient is this? You did not create any extra code. You did not create anything new. Style system will take care of everything because it's all CSS and JS, all dynamic. And look at the code, how readable it is from top to bottom. Okay, so I have a stack. The stack has a spacing of LG. Align center, meaning we are centering the content. The button has a size. On MD, it's MD. On LG, it's LG. A color scheme of teal, variant of solid. The next button, color scheme is teal, variant is outline. How readable is this? You don't need to open any new file. You can just read the code and get how the code is. And everything comes from the thing. This is what we call as a design system. There is more to a design system, but as a developer, this is what you might experience. Cool. So what are some of the drawbacks and cons of this approach? First, it enhances your design system, making it easy to follow atomic design principles. Everything is type safe. Everything is handled with responsive props. No need for any media queries like we saw. Flexible prop-based design system, similar to Chakra UI, well integrated in your theme. And finally, you have runtime style generation. This is one of the cons. You have this runtime style generation. Why? Because it's CSS in JS. So if you're shipping JS, it will take some time to compile, it will take some time to interpret and run. So with that, you have a lot of cost. Now for larger applications, 80 to 85% of the applications, I don't think this might be an issue. But if you have a very large applications, for example, like a no-code tool or a drag and drop editor, things might go out of hand. The biggest issue with CSS in JS these days is server components. CSS in JS solutions aren't optimal because they introduce these runtime styles, which can cause performance issues when during streaming your server-side rendered code. Now, due to this, many teams have developed built-time solutions like Chakra's Panda CSS and Material US Pigment CSS. But for me, I still use CSS in JS because most of the projects that I do, it's all client-side rendered. Now, if you're using Next.js with server-side rendering for a simple to-do app, then you might not use CSS in JS. You have to look at other approaches. Cool. SCSS and class variance authority. So first, let's look at our demo and we'll understand how we implemented this. Let me first open the project. Cool. I'm going fast, but so one of the things style system is like style system. It was last maintained 5 years ago, right? But it still has 500,000 downloads weekly. There is another alternative which is more popular called X-Style, and it has more features. So you can look at this. Cool. So first, let's look at our demo. So same button component, all the variants, all the color schemes. Now we also have dark mode. Beautiful. And we can also see them side by side. Light mode, dark mode. Everything works perfectly. Now, if you were tasked to create this, how would you do it? Like just bring it in front of your eyes. So we are using something called as class variance authority. Similar to class names, it's a simple NPM package, a simple JavaScript function. If you read the GitHub code, it has this variance API. Now this variance, this is something you will pass as a prop intent. If intent is primary, it will attach these classes. If intent is secondary, it will attach these classes. Make sense? Let's take a look at a simple example. So I have this flex component and I want to create chakra-like props where I can pass direction, I can pass justify, everything should be type safe, everything should flow. So how to do this without CSS in JS? So first thing, you have to create all the classes. Create all your utility classes upfront. Yeah, I can hear you. Why not use Tailwind? We'll come to Tailwind, but you have to create all the utility classes upfront. Like I have classes for flex, I have classes for flex row reverse, column, justify, etc. Now we are using CVA. Now when you pass the prop direction equals row, it will attach this flex flow class. If you pass prop direction equals column, it will attach this flex column class. Make sense? Create your utility class and inside CVA, attach them to the props. And you get such a clean, lean API, prop API. But you have to do a lot of work. You have to create all the utility classes by your own, right? Fine. So we'll check the pros and cons. How did I manage the light and dark modes? So in the light.scss, I have all my theme tokens for the light mode. Blue for 50, cyan, red, etc. All the theme tokens for my light mode. Similarly, in the dark.scss, I have all the theme tokens for my dark mode, right? From these base tokens, light and dark, I'm creating something called as semantic tokens, like primary, secondary, success, warning. So we have the base tokens, light and dark, and from that, we're creating semantic tokens like primary, secondary, success. Let's take a look at our button component. So we have the same lean, clean prop component API where we are passing the variant, where you are passing the color scheme, right? Variant border, color scheme sector. Let's check our button cast styles. So in the button, we first have the base styles, display flex, removing the border, etc. Then we have all the variants for button size. So if I pass size equal XX, it will attach the XS class. If I pass size equal SM, it will attach the SM class. You see, it's readable, very much readable. If you want to change anything, you will come to the button.tsx. You will see, okay, I have to change something in SM. You'll go into the button.style.tsx and change things. So if you want to change the space variable, you'll directly land into the theme, right? So it flows. No need to open inspect element and search in the editor. Finally, given the fact that we are using SCSS, we can use these loops, right? And this makes our code clean. So we are not using any CSS in JS, but we can still use loops. Why? Because using SCSS. So for solid, all the primary, secondary classes will be generated in this loop. But if the variant is solid, it will attach the solid class. If the variant is ghost, it will attach the ghost class, so on and so forth. But if you want a verbose code, given the fact that this is CSS at the end of the day, you can write all the verbose codes. So there's always this trade-off between readability and verbosity. Whatever fits for you, you can use this. And you get the same clean, lean prop API. Simple, everything with all the light mode and dark mode, all the variants, all the color schemes, as simple as that. Cool. So what are some of the pros and cons of this approach? Sorry. The pros of this approach include flexible theme-driven utility classes with class variance authority, and the fact that there is no runtime overhead like CSS in JS. You are getting the same functionality without any runtime overhead. The biggest disadvantage for me is that you cannot pass the responsive props that we saw in the previous size, MD, LG. You cannot do that. They won't work, meaning you need to rely on traditional media queries and create separate utility classes, adding more work to the setup. Now, when to use this approach? This approach works well for small projects, like the dashboard I'm currently working on, which has 10 pages, 7 colors, and just one large screen. So there is no responsive styles. For a project like this, SCSS and class variance authority, in my humble opinion, is good rather than vanilla CSS. However, for larger and more complex projects, I would recommend you to use Tailwind CSS for its excellent tooling and the responsive design features. So finally, we'll head to Tailwind. Tailwind CSS and Tailwind variants. Let's first open the project. Cool. You don't need to understand everything, but just flow with me, and we'll take a look at Tailwind variants. Again, I have the same button component, all the color schemes, all the variants, light and dark mode. Now, every one of us have used Tailwind or at least seen Tailwind. So I have a quick question. If you had to build this button with all its color schemes and variants, how would you do this using Tailwind CSS? Just imagine, like, think about it. Here is how I did this. So in the index.css, I have all the light and dark mode, all the colors for my light mode, simple, all the colors for my dark mode, simple, right? Then in the Tailwind config.js, I created all the semantic tokens. So from all the blue, gray, green, etc., I'm creating primary, secondary, success, warning, errors, right? Base tokens, semantic tokens, right? So this light 200, which is my primary default color, blue 600, whenever there is light mode, it will pick the blue 600 from the light. Whenever it's dark mode, it will pick the blue 600 from dark. That's it. I just need to add these class to my root. If the root is light, it will pick blue 600 from the light mode. If it's dark mode, primary value will pick the blue 600 from the dark mode. As simple as that. So I created all these theme in my Tailwind config.js file. I'm extending the theme. Now, how am I creating the button? So first in the app.tsx, I have the same API, clean API, variant, border, color scheme, secondary. Same API, clean, easy to read. Now, how to do this using Tailwind? I'm using Tailwind variants, which is an extension of class variance authority, but works great with Tailwind. You can learn about it more in the documentation. But at the base, I have all the Tailwind classes, removing the border, etc. Then I have all the variants. Color scheme will take all these values, and variant will take all these values. Now we have something called as compound variants. If the color scheme is primary and the variant is solid, attach these classes to my button, BG primary and text white. Where is this BG primary coming from? There is no class called BG primary in Tailwind. Given the fact that we have extended Tailwind CSS, this BG primary and all these colors will be created by Tailwind for us. We don't need to use any SCSS. We don't need to use any custom CSS. All these classes will be created by Tailwind for us. And given the fact that we are using Tailwind variants, everything will be attached to our component whenever the prop is color scheme is primary and variant is solid. As simple as that. Only in 4 files, we created both light and dark modes with such a variety of these buttons with all the color scheme and all the variants with just only 4 files. So the color scheme is primary, the variant is solid. Every color will be created by Tailwind. If I were to scroll down for this flat variant, you can see it's kind of complex where you have the color scheme primary and the variant is flat. The classes are BG primary light. Everything will be created by Tailwind for us. Even the hover styles, hover BG primary light, it will be created by Tailwind for me. I don't need to create any classes. That's it. I mentioned all the classes in the all the colors in the tailwind.config. Everything will be done for me. Then finally, we have the size variants. Here, we have all the sizes, and given the fact that we are using this Tailwind variants, it will provide us with responsive props. So on the MD, I want the size to be MD, and on the large screen, I want the size to be LG. Simple. Tailwind variants and Tailwind CSS will create all the class when I run npm run build. And if there are any unused class, they will remove it. They will purge the classes automatically. That's the beauty of Tailwind CSS with all this tooling. That's why Tailwind exists, right? So it's as simple as that. Now, let me show you one more thing. I'm 25 minutes in my talk. Cool. Okay, so this is Shad UI. It has a lot of themes like orange, light, dark, rose, light, dark, yellow, light, dark, violet, light, dark. How would you do this in Tailwind CSS? Let's say this is your task. This is what you have to create. So even we did something like this: red theme, light, dark, blue theme, light, dark, green theme, light, dark, orange theme, light, dark. So first in the index.css, I created all the classes. Red theme, all the values for red theme, primary, secondary. Dark theme, all the values for red, dark. Blue theme, light values, dark values. Green theme, light values, dark values. Fine. This is basic index.css. I've created all my variables tokens. Then I'm creating all these semantic tokens like primary, secondary. Now you understand the importance of semantic tokens, where you have all the base tokens and you're creating semantic tokens out of this. And finally, we are using Tailwind variants and creating our button component. All this BG primary, text primary, foreground will be created by us, created by Tailwind for us. As simple as that. And we have 4 themes with their dark modes, total 8 combinations. Cool. So what are some of the pros and cons of Tailwind? Automatic class generation and tooling with Tailwind. Tailwind variants similar to CVA with all the responsive buttons, etc. Responsive styles, learning curve. Now learning curve, it might be a barrier for some, but trust me, give it a week or 2 and you will love Tailwind, right? Finally, Panda CSS. Cool. So let me first open the project. So Panda CSS is this build time CSS in JS. So whenever you run npm run build, it will create all the classes for you, but it is CSS in JS, very similar to style components. It is created by the same team behind Chakra UI, right? So again, if you look at the demo, we have the same buttons with all the color schemes, light and dark modes. So how to do this with Panda CSS? You can read more about in the blog post. I'll just glance through. So similar to Tailwind, we have the panda.config.ts file where you have to create all the themes, right? So I have the tokens for space. I have the tokens for space. I have the colors. For the dark mode, I have all the colors. Makes sense? For the light mode, I have all the colors, right? From these base tokens, I'm creating something called as semantic tokens. So I have all the values for primary, secondary, success, both base, light and dark mode, right? Then I have my button. It gives the same CVA-like API where you can pass in styles. This time it's more verbose as compared to Tailwind where you are just adding classes. But in my opinion, I like this verbosity. And given the fact that we are using CSS in JS, it's all type safe. I don't think you can get this with Tailwind. Primary border, etc. Even the base tokens, blue 100, everything, type safe. You don't need to look anywhere else, right? So if the color scheme is primary, variant is solid, attach this primary, BG should be primary and color should be white. Where is this primary coming from? It is coming from our semantic tokens. Panda CSS will take care of creating the styles. Given the fact that this is CSS in JS, you can create custom utilities, just like we saw in style system. So rather than adding padding left, padding right everywhere, I can just do PX, which stands for padding horizontal, and everything is type safe. Every value comes from our theme. That's the power with CSS in JS, and there is no runtime. And you can also have responsive props. So we have sizes, everything type safe. LG on LG will do MD. Simple. Even with Panda CSS, we can create all the themes that we saw with shard scene. So I'll show you the code. You can take a look at it. Yeah, red theme, blue theme, green theme, orange theme. Even with Panda CSS, you can do that. So it's always between verbosity and readability. With Panda CSS, so we'll take a look at the pros and cons. It's a build time solution, so no runtime performance impact. Enhanced TypeScript support. You can add custom CSS properties with all the responsive styles. It has a verbose syntax, right? For some, you might find this as a con, but for me, it's fine. Learning curve. Developers will have a learning curve because Panda CSS has a lot to offer, and you have to you will have a learning curve. So what are some of the highlights? And I'm 30 minutes. I'll wrap it up. No matter which particular approach I used, everything was theme driven. Everything had code readability. You can read the code from top to bottom. Everything was like aligned. Everything was in its place, in its file. Then we have component variants. All the variant API type safe. It makes the code more readable. And similarly, you have scalability. You can change the code any day. You won't have any readability or maintainability issues. No matter which particular approach you use, you have to write clean code, lean code, good code, and just ship the code. You don't fight whether Tailwind versus Panda. If you're familiar with Tailwind, use Tailwind. If you're familiar with Panda, use Panda. If you're familiar with style components, use style components. That's it. So here are some of the links. You can find all of the code on GitHub. I have written extensive blogs on Chakra UI clone, everything on my blog, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can scan any of these and you can reach the other two. Yeah, thank you very much. I hope it was overwhelming, but I hope you found some, I hope you learned something new, and you can, I have my email in my blog. You can hit me and I'll try to respond. Thank you.